So, as this conversation with Anthony Edwards and his dismissal of the 90s having no school continues, there was one guy I was waiting to hear from. It was Chris Broussard. Now, at this time of the year in August, a lot of analysts are on vacation, and he was away for a couple of weeks. But he came back to the studio and he sat down with Jay Husky to react to what Anthony Edwards had to say on The Odd Couple. And he had a lot to say about that situation. Now, if you missed what Anthony Edwards had to say last week, he said that outside of Michael Jordan, no other player in the 90s had any particular skill. And we talked about in the last episode with Kevin Garnett. We're going to play the clip of Chris Broussard in just a moment. Now, I want to go a little bit deeper into skill because there's a lot of conversation about, well, if you can't score, you're not that good because they don't value rebounding and passing as much. If you can't shoot the three ball as well, you're just not a good player. And I understand where people are coming from when it comes to three-point shot because that has changed the game today. But we should also value assist. We should also value your defense and your rebounding because if you can't do those things, it's going to lead to situations where your team isn't that good and you don't have a great impact. I think of a guy like Cam Thomas, who is fantastic on offense, but his defense, his playmaking is not up there. He's a great scorer, but all he can do is just get a bucket. And those are important things. But if you're trying to be a really good overall player, then you need to bring some other value on the basketball court. You can be an amazing three-point shooter. You can get whatever basket you want. But if you can't guard anybody, then it's just going to cancel out. So when we're looking at skills, can you box somebody out? Can you get extra possessions for your team? Can you make the right pass? Can you hold on to the ball when somebody's pressuring you? Can you get by your opponent and get to the basket and draw free throws? Those are skills as well. I think we look too much at the three-point shot and your ability to dunk on somebody a little too much because we have to look at your entire game and go, okay, he can pass, he can rebound, he can play defense. Those skills are just as valuable. Of course, you still got to be able to put the ball in the basket because if you can't outscore your opponent, you don't win the game. So I get all that. But to just diminish some of these skills and act like it's not important is just not the best approach when it comes to talking about, oh, well, these guys shoot the ball a lot better today and they're able to generate more threes. When the reality is those other things matter, like the mid-range and getting there. A lot of guys don't get to the mid-range today. SGA is one of the best at that. So is Kawhi Leonard. I like that Jaylen Brown relies on his mid-range game, but you don't see a lot of players going to the mid-range anymore. Now, I'm going to play a clip of what Chris Broussard had to say, and I'll give you my reaction.
But I actually want to break this down.
Okay.
I want to break down what Anthony Edwards said, and let's explore it. And we I think we'll have a chance to give it to the callers and see what they think. But first of all, VJ,
let's go.
What does he mean by skill? What does he mean by skill? Because obviously Michael Jordan is the GOAT. I think you agree with that too.
Not close. You're absolutely right.
All right. But Michael Jordan in the 90s was not the best shooter in the league. He was probably the best mid-range shooter, but he wasn't the best overall jump shooter. He had a nice handle, but it wasn't the best handle in the league.
No.
He was a very good passer, but he wasn't the best passer in the league. You know what I mean? So now he had the best moves, and that's a skill. But if I'm just wondering, like, why do you say Michael was skilled? He was, of course, but other guys weren't. There were guys that dribbled better than Michael. There were guys that shot better than Michael. There were guys that passed better than Michael. But why weren't they skilled? And secondly, I'm wondering, like, who VJ, who won the MVP on Team USA this year at the Olympics?
LeBron. Yeah, LeBron.
Now, I think Steph should have won it because he was so dynamic in those last two games, but LeBron was the best player over the 6 games. That's fine. My point is this. Is LeBron the most skilled player on that team?
No.
LeBron ain't the best shooter.
Nope.
He's not the best LeBron's airballed several free throws.
Yeah.
And I love LeBron. I'm just saying he's airballed several free throws in the NBA.
Yeah.
All right. He is not the best dribbler. He's the best passer on that team. But what are you even talking about? What do you even mean when you say skills? Because I tell you one thing that's a skill, VJ. Post moves.
Absolutely.
Who playing today? And I'm including Nikola Jokic, and he's about the only one I can say. He's the only one with any even decent post moves. And his post moves aren't great. Really aren't. I mean, as much as I love Jokic, I think he's the best player in the world. His post moves aren't great.
Slow motion.
Right. He's big. He got a little hook, little jump hook, and he can, score in there. Ain't nobody in the NBA today that has a fraction of the post moves that Hakeem Olajuwon had in the 90s. Or that Kevin McHale had in the 80s.
Yep.
There is no one in the NBA today, because passing is a skill. And it includes LeBron, and it includes Nikola Jokic, who is close to as good of a passer as Magic Johnson was. 3 of the best passers of all time. I would say 3 of the top 10 passers of all time. Isaiah Thomas, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird. They played in the 80s, not even the 90s for the most part.
I can't fit John Stockton in there?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Right. He was obviously more 90s.
Yeah.
And so I'm just saying, like, what are you even talking about? What do you mean by skill? The only thing, I guess, are you saying 3-point shooting? And they shoot the 3. Last year, 2024, the average 3-point percentage in the league, VJ, was 36.6%. In 1998, when the line was same as it is today, it was shorter for 3 years in the 90s. But in 1998, it was the same. It was 34.6%. So 2 percentage points difference in 3-point shooting. They just shoot it a lot more now.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, I believe if they had shot it as much then, the percentage would be pretty close to what it is now. I will admit that the ball handling today is better.
You think so?
Well, here, let me finish.
Okay.
It's better than ever, but here's why. They let you carry.
Okay, all right, there we go. Okay, well, then it's not better then.
But I mean, they allow it. But I agree with you. I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree with that. But you know what I'm saying? Like I played point guard in college. I'm not saying I had the greatest handle in the world. I didn't. But I'm telling you, if I would have been allowed to palm the ball the way they do today, you literally see dudes take they'll have their hand under the ball for a split second.
A whole second.
And cross over and go to opposite. Like, that is, I mean, you can do all types of stuff now. They carry bringing the ball up court against no defense.
Nope.
They carry all the time.
When
we were growing up, you had to keep your hand on top of the ball.
Top of the ball.
Sometimes it gets on the side, of course. But you can do so much more when you have that type of freedom to have your hand under the ball, to hold it for a split second or a second in the air before you decide which way you go. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, serious. And so that is why you see, what he thinks are skills. And to your point, it's breaking the rules, but they now allow it. And so, Ant should have stopped at, I didn't watch it back then, so I can't speak on it.
Now, the first thing I want to talk about is 3-point shooting, because he made some good points there, where today's average, or say last year, was at 36%. Now, I first want to talk about the 3-point percentage since 1990, and we'll stop at 2010. So in 1989 to 90, it was 33%. I know they shortened the line. I believe it was for 3 seasons where they saw the jump. It was in 94, 95. Well, it went up to 36%. Now, I want to go over here, too, the 3-point attempts. They went up slowly, right? Almost 7 a game, 7.1, 7.6, 9.0, 9.9, 15.3, 16, 16.8, and 12.7. So it went back down. 13.2, 13.7 stayed the same in 2000, 2001. 14.7 stayed the same in 2002, 2003. And as you see, the numbers went up. And now we went from about almost 7 a game from 1989 to 1990 to 18.1 in 2009, 2010. What does that tell us? yes, the percentages you see here at 35.5%. So that's about a 2% improvement, but the attempts were up as well. So based on those numbers, if the guys in the past were taking more threes, we can assume that it's possible they would have got to maybe 34, 35%, but they're only at like 6 a game. And then as you go down here, you're seeing the numbers get to 20 by 2012, 2013. And in 2013, 2014, 21.5. Now let's look at players who had the highest three-point field goal percentage in the 1990s. Steve Kerr's at 46%. I know he only attempted 2 a game. And then we look at Petrovic, 2 a game. Hubert Davis, 2.7 a game. Now they're shooting over 40%. Michael Dickerson, 3.3. Craig Hodges, 2 attempts a game. Now, as you can see, the attempts are not that high, but if we keep going down here, Dana Barros, 3.4. Paul Pierce, 4.3. Now remember, the three-point attempts went up as each season progressed. So if we get to the late 90s, the attempts have doubled. If we keep going down, Del Curry, 3.4. Wesley Person, 4.5. Glenn Rice, he was playing in the late 90s, early 2000s, 4.2. Jeff Hornacek, 2.3. Reggie Miller, almost at 5 attempts a game, shooting 40%. Kenny Jet Smith, 2.5 at 40%. And as you keep going down here, Steve Nash only attempted 2, but he was at 40%. A lot of these guys are at 40% at night. Chris Mullin, almost 3 a game for three-point attempts. He's at 40%. And if you keep going down, even John Stockton, 2 a game at 39%. My thing is this. These guys are still shooting the basketball really well. They might not be attempting as much, but they're still over 40% or close to it. Now let's go to the players who've had the highest three-point percentage in the NBA since. Now let's talk about the players who have the highest averages in the 2000s. Now let's talk about the players who have the highest average in the 2010s era. Kyle Korver, he's attempted almost 5 a game. Remember, attempts are up now. They're around 16 a game. He's shooting at 44.5%. Now, he didn't shoot better than Kerr. Kerr was at 46%. I know Now, let's talk about the players who shot the highest percentage in the 2010s era. Kyle Korver, 44% at almost 5 attempts a game. Seth Curry, 44% at almost 4 attempts a game. Again, he's at 3.6. And then Steph Curry, he's shooting 8. He takes a lot of attempts. He shot 43.6. Steve Novak, 43.5 on 3 attempts a game. Joe Harris, 4 attempts a game on 42.7%. I'm noticing role players take less threes as we keep going down the list here. Mike Miller, 2.5. Larry Shamet, okay, so he's at 5 on 42% shooting. Klay Thompson, actually restarting like that. So let's look at the players who had the highest percentages in the 2010s. Kyle Korver, 44.5 on 5 attempts a game. Seth Curry, 44% on almost 4 attempts a game. Stephen Curry, almost 44% from the field from 3 at 8.2 points. Now let's look at the players who shot the highest percentage in the 2010s era. Kyle Korver is at the top of the list at 44%. Seth Curry, 44%. Steph Curry, almost 44% on 8 attempts. Steve Novak, 3 attempts a night. So some of these players took like 3 or 4 attempts a game. And Joe Harris, 42.7. Mike Miller, 42.4. So we're looking at like a 1 to 2% difference with like a guy like Kenny Jet Smith and a guy like Mike Miller. Klay Thompson, 42%, 7 attempts. Landry Shamet, 42% on 5 attempts. Matt Bonner, almost 3 attempts a night on 42% shooting. Buddy Hield, 42% shooting on 6 attempts a night. And if we keep going down here, Quinn Cook, 42%. JJ Redick, 41.5 on almost 6 attempts a night. Jose Calderon, he's on 41% on 3 attempts. So again, a lot of these guys are still shooting in that 40% range. And you can argue that, okay, there's some of them are still shooting like 3 attempts a game. They're not attempting a lot. And that does matter as well. And Ray Allen, of course, he's going to shoot a lot because he was a shooter. That's what his job was out there. He was very athletic, and then he turned into just a 3-point sniper. He was still shooting the ball very well while he had the athleticism, but as his career progressed, he definitely relied on the three-point shot even more. So let's look at the league average three-point percentage since 2010. As you can see here, they were attempting 18 shots a night. Then they went to 20 in 2012, 2013, up to 32 attempts in 2018, 2019. So as you see, the attempts steadily increased. You look at the percentage, it was up and down, 35 here, 35%, 35.4, and 36.2, 35.5. So the numbers have been up and down as the attempts have increased. And they got 36.6 recently on attempts of 35 a night. So that's a big deal. You go back to the 1990s, they started at 6 attempts a night. So of course, they're not going to rely on the three-point shot because they're not taking as many. But as each season went on, they got up to, I believe it was 18 attempts a night by the time we got to 2000. When you're looking at this data, what it tells me is that the players today are taking more three-point shots. That's obvious to me. And if you look at the players from the 90s, they only got up to 18 attempts a night. And I believe if they were in today's era, they would have made those adjustments and they would have still shot 40%. Just like today's players would have gone back in their era and still shoot over 40% because they're just really good at their job. And there are fans who will say, well, you know what? The players from the 90s are scrubs. They're not that good. But they work on their game every day. And if you don't have phones back then, you don't have to worry about social media. Imagine how they're going to focus today with the same mentality and the same approach. I think they would have been fine. Now, I'm not a big fan of just discrediting an era. I know like today, the dribbling has changed. You can argue that they are carrying. I get all that. I'm not going to argue whatsoever. They do have more freedom out there. That is obvious. But at the same time, there's still a lot of talent. So I still enjoy the NBA today. But I can also acknowledge the fact that the 90s players don't need to be disrespected because they helped build the league today. Magic and Bird helped build the league. Michael Jordan, Hakeem Olajuwon, John Stockton, Karl Malone. These guys helped build this league as well. So I don't want to discredit an era because what's going to happen, I'm telling you right now, once this era is finished and the next generation of fans watch basketball, they are going to criticize this era. They're going to say it's complete garbage. And the fans that are loving today's game are going to be upset about that. But you're going to know how the fans of the 90s felt during that time. So just be ready for it. All in all, Chris Broussard made some really good points, especially when he was talking about Hakeem Olajuwon. I haven't seen anybody with a post-game package like Hakeem in a long time. So that needs to be recognized. And then on top of that, of course, the dribbling and the three-point percentage, those are all valid stuff. Hope you guys enjoyed this video today. Love to hear your thoughts on what Chris Broussard had to say about Anthony Edwards' comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.